Here are 7 hacks to be a better attorney that will cost you nothing. I'm Tiffany Weber. I'm a real estate attorney, and I own a law firm with 3 locations in North Carolina. Up first is read. I know that sounds boring, but it is my number 1 hack to help me be a better attorney. And I'm not talking about just, like legal journals. I'm talking reading fiction, nonfiction, poetry, news articles, whatever you can get your hands on to read. 1, because, expand your horizons, but 2, your vocabulary will improve from reading. You'll start to take in new perspectives that maybe you're not exposed to in your daily life. And you'll also learn something new, especially if you're spending time reading nonfiction and things like that. So that is my number 1 tip. I would say reading has helped me the most of anything when it comes to improving my skills as an attorney. Next is writing articles on legal topics to a general audience. I would argue that you could also make videos on those topics. It doesn't necessarily have to be writing, but so much of what we do as attorneys revolves around writing, so it's a good way to sharpen your skills as a writer while also making sure that you understand the topics that you're explaining. I've always found that I know that I understand a topic when I can get up in front of someone and explain it to them in general terms, and they walk away feeling like they understand it as well. Same thing when it comes to writing. I always found that when I was writing briefs that I was better at that when I would spend the time to try to explain the topic as simply as possible and not use a ton of legal jargon. Judges are people too, and they probably get sick of jargon just as much as we do as attorneys. So I try to spend time writing things for a general audience and explaining legal concepts that way. And also, as you know, I spend a lot of time talking about them as well. Number 3, to be a better attorney that will cost you nothing is to volunteer. So no, it doesn't cost you any money. It does cost you some time, but volunteering, whether it's with a nonprofit, legal clinics, doing some pro bono work, is a good way to get exposure to other practice areas that maybe you've been interested in. For example, in North Carolina, a lot of people know that in September, the Western North Carolina was affected by Hurricane Helene. And a lot of those people, they lost everything, including important legal documents like all of their wills, their powers of attorney, things like that. So there was a great opportunity for attorneys who maybe never had spent a lot of time doing estate planning to learn that skill while also helping others. And in that type of setting, you have guidance, you've got materials that you can use to learn from. So it's a way to get exposure to a practice area or learn more about a subject matter where, you don't have a case that you've got to go try. There's not as much pressure. It's of course really important, but you've got structure around you and guidance to help you learn. The next thing that will help you be a better attorney is to put yourself in positions to do public speaking and have to think on your feet. So it doesn't necessarily have to be at big conferences, but maybe you get into a Toastmasters, or you get involved in some sort of networking group where you have some obligation to present on a regular basis, or you participate in roundtables or seminars where you're on a panel and people are asking you questions that you may not be 100% knowing what they're going to ask you. And I think that's a good way to help become a better attorney, because as we know, we're often put in situations with our clients or in the courtroom where we're asked a question that we don't have scripted out everything we're going to say all the time. Being in positions in low stress situations where there's not a lot of consequences for, if you stumble on a word, that will help build up your confidence and your ability to think on your feet and come up with well-reasoned arguments or explaining concepts without worrying if you're going to lose a case. Number 5, this one may be a little unconventional, but I would say self-reflect to get comfortable with not being liked. However you decide to do that, whether it's just, talking yourself through it when somebody doesn't like you, whether you go to therapy, you pray, whatever you do, whatever you can do to get yourself comfortable with people not liking you will help you be a better attorney. Especially in litigation, naturally, the other side's not going to like you. At least attorney to attorney, we can maintain some professionalism and know that it's not personal. But there is some side actively working against you in litigation to get the opposite result that you want. But it's also really important to understand that you don't have to be liked to do your job well. And in fact, a lot of times in our profession, if everyone likes you, you are probably not doing your job well, because making sure that you're doing what's in the best interest of your client sometimes means that you make other people mad. And that was something that, I still work on to this day, but I've grown leaps and bounds in knowing that it's okay to say no, it's okay to not be liked. And in fact, that is my job, to make sure that I'm doing what's in the best interest of my client, regardless of how people will perceive me because of it. The next thing, number 6, is to understand within your firm how processes work. How do things work together? Knowing, when one person completes this step, who does what next and why. I think it's really important to know how your work fits into what your firm does, but also to know how each step affects the other. Let's say you're in, the early stages of part of a process and you're running behind on a project because you've had something else really important come up. Well, if you don't understand how your work affects the rest of the team, then you might be putting other people in a really bad position, and then they don't want to work with you on other matters because you let some other more important thing to you affect their critical portions of their job. So when you understand how you play into everything, then it helps you prioritize. It also helps you just think more holistically about how matters work together. And this kind of ties into my last thing, which is get to know local business owners and what makes them tick. So I think an obvious reason is like referral sources, especially in small firms. That's how we get a lot of our business, is other local business owners. But more importantly, knowing how local business owners run their business really helps you learn how they make decisions. And when you're advising clients, understanding their psychology and how they make decisions is really important, because you might have what you believe is the best case, and you believe your client's going to win in litigation, and you tell them that, and you're like, we can take this all the way. I believe we're going to get a favorable outcome for you. But they're looking at the finances of, okay, and what's your hourly rate, and how many years are we going to spend doing that? Because to them, it might not be economical to win. It might be more economical to settle, even if they are in the right. So those are the things that you have to consider when you're advising clients, so that even if on principle, or if the legal reasoning is there that they could win, it still might not be a good decision for them to take something all the way to trial, or to continue pushing litigation out to keep racking up expenses. That's why I also say understanding the processes. It's important to know how everything works together, because you can't give the best advice possible if you're only thinking of the legal matters. Yes, it's important. That's the reason we get engaged, is for our legal brain and to give legal advice. But understanding how that factors into your client's risk tolerance, what other things they're having to consider when they're making this legal decision, is really important. It will help you give better advice. So there you have it. Those are 7 hacks to become a better attorney that will cost you nothing.